Hi, my name is Rob Scott from UC Today, bringing you all the latest news and the conversation from the unified communications and collaboration space. So today I'm joined by Calero MDSL, and we're going to be discussing UCaaS expense management for Zoom. Welcome, David and Mark.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining me. So I suppose, just a shout out to the audience, first of all. If you're a Zoom enterprise and you're wondering how you can take control of your expenses, then stay tuned for this session because we have a superb, conversation lined up just for you. So just before we get started, however, how about we do a round of introductions? David, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am the Executive Vice President of Product Management and Learning at Calero MDSL, responsible for our strategic roadmap. I've been in the SaaS product management and consulting space my entire career. And a little bit about the company. Calero MDSL is the leader in the technology expense management space. We provide services primarily in telecom, mobility, and of course, SaaS and UCaaS expense management via our own SaaS platform and related services. We have over 3,000 enterprise customers and manage around $25 billion in annual technology spend for our customers.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And Mark?
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Product Management at Calero MDSL and responsible for the SaaS and UCaaS product lines, responsible for the roadmap delivery and speaking to our customers and understanding the challenges and their requirements. I've been doing expense management for 20 years, so I've understood the different sort of technology life cycles that we've been through with telecom expense management, and now we're seeing this explosion in sort of SaaS and UCaaS expenses. So excited to talk about it today.
Thanks, Mark, and we certainly are, aren't we? I mean, Zoom just reported on their latest earnings report that they've now 500,000 customers with more than 10 employees, and that's up 87% on the year before. So they literally have gone off like a rocket. And I think you rightly said, the rest of the SaaS market has as well recently. So, David, I'd like to go to you first on this one. I mean, why do you think Zoom has been so successful recently?
Well, even before COVID hit a year and a half ago or so, they were making good on their mission statement of making video communications frictionless. And so they were not only riding the wave of UCaaS growth generally, but doing a really good job of being a leader in that space before COVID. Then, of course, the pandemic hit. Everyone heads home to work remotely. And Zoom was one of the first and fastest to get into those enterprises that hadn't already selected a solution and make it really easy to enable that transition quickly. And then, of course, with their intuitive, simple user interface and experience, they also have done a great job focusing on consumer use. So free licenses for shorter video calls. They also were quick to capture the school market and other places outside of business. And what that allowed them to do was really capture part of the pop culture phenomenon. Now we say things like, let's jump on a Zoom call, even if we're talking about a different video communications platform in some cases. And then finally, in the enterprise space, they have been really creative and aggressive in their commercial structuring and contracting with their customers. Their pricing has been very flexible and, again, creative, and that has made them very easy to do business with. And so not only have they done a great job on the retail consumer side, but of course, all of that work before the pandemic, the intuitiveness of the solution and their creative commercial model, they have captured a huge portion of the market share in an also rapidly growing trend generally.
That's great. And they've got this, very successful marketplace, haven't they? And I suppose, network.
That's why we have just recently published a Calero MDSL application in the Zoom marketplace to make it really easy for our mutual customers to onboard their Zoom spend and licenses in our solution and manage that category of expense as well. So, the growth of Zoom, the rapid growth, I should say, and the market share capture that they have been able to achieve is, of course, one of the reasons that we have chosen to publish that app on their marketplace.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in good company there. Okay, over to you, Mark, for this one. I just want to firstly define a little bit more around kind of UCaaS expense management. I mean, could you talk us through kind of, what it is and why it matters to enterprises?
Yeah, so, I think as customers are sort of transitioning over to unified communications, looking to perhaps consolidate providers and simplify that landscape, one of the things that's always kind of front of mind when talking about these things is, how do we kind of keep control of those costs and be able to understand and monitor those costs sort of going forward. So really it's a solution to sort of automatically manage, monitor and optimize the UCaaS environment. And, that really starts from a position of visibility and, getting a total cost of ownership for that UCaaS investment. So a lot of people, when they think about Zoom, they think about the licenses that have been deployed and they think about the recurring elements of that spend. But what we're talking about here is not just the recurring elements, but also the variable cost consumption as well. So the actual call charges, if you're, subscribing to something like a Zoom phone, or Zoom meeting where you sort of push out toll-free numbers and those kind of costs as well. So this is a significant overall investment for many enterprises, and what we want to be doing is showing that within a single pane of glass. So we have deep industry knowledge and expertise in how to manage telecom expenses. A lot of that expense is now being transitioned over to unified communications, and again we want to be able to show that investment in a single pane of glass, and also how it's transitioning across as well, because it's not always, something that happens as a sort of a big bang approach. It can happen as a kind of a slower rollout where you have pockets of the organization that have been modernized onto a UCaaS platform, and you have other pockets of the organization that are still on sort of traditional PBX type voice services. So we want to be able to show all of that and how those investments are sort of transitioning and changing over time. In terms of some of the challenges when you're looking to roll out technologies quickly, it can create sort of blind spots for the organization in terms of being able to manage that overall expense, in terms of being able to provide a mechanism to be able to show back and charge back those costs to the various lines of business. And then also, all importantly, to be able to reduce that expense where possible. It's very easy to get excited about new technologies as they come out and they're very consumable, but also that creates risk for the business as they want to be able to try and keep control of that expense and not have sort of budget overruns. So our solution kind of encapsulates all of that and really delivers value in those areas to make sure that customers can understand what they're spending, but then also they can optimize that where possible.
Yeah, that's a really key point you made there as well around kind of, a multitude of vendors in organizations nowadays. There's not just Zoom, is there? There's often Microsoft Teams sat alongside it, or a legacy PBX or whatever that needs billing. So that single pane of glass sounds quite crucial to the whole expense management, process.
And I think one of the things that's really sort of net new is also managing that license element of the expenditure as well. As I said before, we've got a deep expertise in telecom expense management, and you can sort of lift and shift that infrastructure and use Teams, for example, as the mechanism to be able to make those calls, but kind of keep your telephony infrastructure the same. But obviously, there's a license cost associated with doing that, and so we're bringing all of that into a consolidated view so that customers have got that total cost of ownership available to them and broken down to the various different lines of business where they want to understand what their departments are consuming, what their teams are consuming, in quite often very complex enterprises.
Fantastic. So what specifically can it do for Zoom customers? Anything that, let's just kind of run through the kind of key benefits if we can.
Sure. I mean, we talked earlier about the marketplace app. I think one of the most important things, we go into a lot of conversations with enterprises. We ask them, how much are they spending on unified communications? And sometimes they don't know. They don't know the answer to those questions. and they don't necessarily have the visibility to be able to quickly answer that. So one of the key sort of value propositions, the benefits that we're delivering, is that fast time to value, and that's backed up by the app in the Zoom marketplace. And what that's doing is it's connecting to Zoom's APIs, and it's collecting all of that data and seeding it into our system to provide a turnkey implementation. So it's extremely frictionless and very easy to follow through as a process, and that will then give you those insights immediately in terms of understanding what your spend is and understanding what your utilization is to be able to provide you with, actionable insights. We're then obviously, maintaining that as an integration point into Zoom, and we're automating what's called the moves, adds, and changes process. So as they're provisioning new licenses and rolling those out to the business, that's automatically updating our solution. When they're turning those licenses down, that's automatically removing them from our solution. So they've completely automated that whole moves, adds, and changes process. And then also, if they're initiating cancellations through our solution, then again, that's another way that we're able to kind of connect and provide that value. Cost control is a really important thing. We've had a lot of conversations with customers that, want to either right size their licenses. We talked about this concept of a basic license, and if you don't need the bells and whistles of a pro license, then to be able to downgrade to a basic license, if maybe you're only participating on calls, for example, then we have the capabilities to be able to show that and to be able to action that within the platform. And then also if you're just not using those licenses at all, and this is a really big one. So customers come into the platform, they're surprised by the metrics that they see in terms of how much the service that they thought that they paid for as kind of an all-encompassing investment, how much has that really been adopted in the enterprise? And then what we're doing is we're able to right-size that and reclaim those licenses automatically so they can be redeployed to other areas of business that maybe do want to use them. So it's about proactive cost control.
2 additional points on that question that Mark mentioned as well. Not only do you often see low usage or zero usage of some of these licenses where everyone got a license when the business shifted to remote work through COVID, and now some of the employees are coming back at least part-time, some full-time. Even if they were using those licenses, do they still need them? But also you see a lot of heavy usage of a Zoom license, for example, but then you see that same person has licenses for 1, 2, or even 3 other similar products. And so you can quickly find redundancy and make recommendations to optimize the spend so that you're still empowering the employees and making sure that they're all able to collaborate and communicate in the best possible way, but not given redundant solutions unless, of course, they need redundancy. And in some cases, we bake that redundancy into the policies of the tool as well. So, for example, salespeople, maybe you want them to have redundant solutions so that if the internal tool is down, they can always go and log into their other UCaaS solution and have a way of demoing their product to a customer or having those external conversations. So they have a backup plan as well. And those policies based on the role or the department of the employee, we can build into the logic of the tool so that all of those optimization recommendations are bespoke to the customer, to the type of user, and their role.
I love that. So proactive report sounds like a dream to anyone involved in expense management. So tell us, in terms of the kind of the big ones here that we should share with the audience in terms of reports, which ones offer the greatest level of value, do you think? Yeah,
so I guess one of the things that's also very beneficial with the solution is that in many cases, in all cases, in fact, we leverage the master data that we hold for our customers in terms of integrating their HR systems into our platform, and that acts as like a foundational basis from which they want to do show back, charge back, and we're understanding everything about that organization, the geographical footprint, the organizational makeup, and we're basically supplementing that with the Zoom data in this case, or whether it's Teams, any unified communications provider, and we'll be able to deliver immediate insights for things like offboarding processes. So where you have an employee that's left the business that still has licenses that are active, then we're able to immediately flag those up and reclaim them automatically through the platform if they've left and they need assistance with that offboarding process. The second one is really those surfacing those low utilization of licenses, especially those with the more expensive plans. We talk about things like Zoom Pro and Zoom Basic, but if you think about the cost of an E1 versus an E5, for Teams consumption on Microsoft, those sorts of things are really, really important. And so there's quite a big cost difference between those two different plans, and where we can help customers to right size those. It's always those types of optimizations that are going to yield the biggest benefits.
Sorry, Mark. Finally, I just wanted to come back to, we've mentioned showback and chargeback a few times. And for anyone not familiar with those terms, essentially we're talking about taking the actual invoices from the vendor, in this case Zoom or Microsoft or whomever, and allocating portions of those invoices to the appropriate cost centers or departments within your business. So that report, of course, is critical for accounting purposes, budgeting and forecasting. But there's also the benefit of our ability to manage the bill pay for these vendors. So, for example, we have a lot of multinational, giant enterprises, and they get a single Zoom invoice every month, right? But they need to be able to bill parts of that invoice against multiple legal entities around the world. And so we actually can take that single Zoom invoice, allocate portions of it to their legal entities, and even pay their Zoom invoice on their behalf, and then charge them internally portions of that bill so that they can manage this vendor and this invoice like they have all of their more traditional telecom vendors, for example, where they expect that bill to be broken down into pieces and billed internally based on the actual usage and consumption within their business units.
Well, so that makes complete sense, but I hadn't realised that was. I mean, that must be a huge challenge for organisations, especially the large enterprises, having to, I suppose they're taking direct contracts with providers like Zoom, but then they're deploying that globally nowadays, especially more and more nowadays. So, wow, well, that must be a real challenge.
It is. I mean, these are globally consumed services across very complex multinational organizations, and so that's the reason why when you think about you can then recover the costs for those globally distributed services, then we're providing the mechanism and the solutions to be able to deliver that. But then the other side of it as well is the fact that the department heads, the lines of business, in many cases you might have negotiated a fixed number of licenses, and then you distribute those by department according to how many employees there are within that department, and you need to the department managers need to be able to monitor and manage the licenses that have been deployed and intelligently recycle those licenses if they're not being utilized. And so again, that's where our platform comes into play, where we can report out on the very big number, but then we can also report out the incremental numbers all the way down to the employee level. So we can provide employee level visibility with a portal so that they can go in and they can see and understand exactly what their own costs are. And then they can also reclaim and return those licenses at any time if they feel like they're not using them. So for me, and having spent 20 years in expense management, the first step is always visibility. The second step is then cost ownership. And so as soon as you can foster the spirit of cost ownership, that's when you really start to see cost reductions and this kind of overall concept of cost control.
That's really great. Okay, finally, David, how do we take this to market at Calero MDSL?
Yeah, so just like our telecom and mobility expense management and managed services, we go direct to our customers and prospects. But we also have channel partners, and we are looking at building up our channel partnership program for UCaaS expense management as well. But we will continue to go direct, and we provide these services through our own software platform, software as a service, of course, hosted by us. and we can provide that to our customers as a self-service tool or as part of a holistic service and support offering on top of that software platform. And in either case, like we've talked about earlier today, it's incredibly easy to set up and get running. We are in the Zoom Marketplace app. We have a similar structure for Office 365 and Microsoft Teams, so we can onboard those mutual customers and that UCaaS data in minutes instead of weeks or months, and have those recommendations up and running very, very quickly.
Fantastic. And for anyone looking to find out more, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, the best way is go to Calero-MDSL.com. You'll find the UCaaS solution easily on the page if you click on solutions, and you can always reach out to myself or Mark directly.
Fantastic.
And you can also find it on the Zoom Marketplace as well.
And that is a key point, in the Zoom Marketplace as well. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Mark. Hey, David, Mark, it's been super speaking to you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks very much, Rob. Appreciate it.
And that's it from us. If you've enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to UC Today News and give this video a quick share on social, as it's always appreciated. And if you're a UC fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can join us using the UC News hashtag on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And our social links are in the description. So I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.